Greer,
Hi.
welcome. Hi, Greer.
Thank
How are
you.
you?
I'm fine.
Fine.
I'm
You are my
fine.
dear friend Greer McVay, and I am so glad and honored you're here talking with me right now.
I'm flattered that I was asked to be here and a little, I wouldn't say surprised, but I would say um caught off guard. It's like, oh, little old me, you know me enough to know that I'm not the most immodest person around.
Yeah.
So in that regard, it's like, yeah, of course you want me on your show. Who wouldn't? And then the other, the little girl from Berkeley part of me is like, wow, she likes me. She really
Yeah.
likes me.
Well, I do. I really do. Um, but there's more to it than that. I do want to talk to and draw out people who inspire me. And everyone who inspires me does so for a very different reason. You as a person, the minute I met you, there was so much power and confidence in who you were and what you knew you brought to the table. And when you met me, you probably noticed that there was not as much of that going on with me.
I've
Um,
noticed no such thing.
but so the reason why I wanted to talk about branding with you is because I like to delve into why people do the things that they do, and I know you to be a very human person with flaws and frailties like we all are, and as well as some very deep wells of compassion that are there, but you also have a very clear image that you present. That sometimes the things about your deep compassion, as well as your flaws and intricacies, you keep those to your vest, and then you carry yourself as a person who has the weight, the authority, and the ability to go straight through, which is something I admire in you and want to pick apart in a little bit of detail right now.
All right.
It's like, okay.
Pick away. It's fascinating to me sometimes other people's reactions to me and other people's perceptions of me. And I get a lot of different reactions, but a lot of, not a lot, but people have told me when they met me, upon meeting me, they were sure that they were going to hate me.
Really?
Yeah. And it's like, it's something, would you perhaps um, perceive as confidence or assuredness, self-assuredness, or what have you, other people perceive as arrogance or, uh, and it's like, really? Me? I'm so nice. And, but people they've actually told me that. I've had a number of people over the years tell me that. So sometimes I care. Other
Mhm.
times, other times I don't care. Generally, I do care about what other people think of me. And some people are very adamant that, I don't care what, I don't care. Well, I do care. And I do want people to like me. And I do want to come across as someone who is approachable and likable and fun and all of those things. However, um, I also don't want people to mistake my kindness for weakness. So
Mhm.
I do make an effort to present myself as very strong and confident, and even at times when I'm not necessarily so.
Okay. Okay. I'm like holding a little check marks in my head here because of a couple of things you said. And I want to say them out loud because I want to get to them, but it seems like we got to go a little pace here. You said not necessarily so. So this one, that's a piece of it that I want to hang on to. but you also said something about perception as weakness. Tell me more about that. Is that something you believe, or is something you believe people believe?
I believe people believe it. I think that people sometimes see other people as people who are not outspoken, who come across as quiet or shy or meek or any number of adjectives. Some people perceive that they can be walked over, or that they're not going to be strong. That's not the person that they picked to be on their team, right? I
Right.
always wanted to be the person that people picked to be on their team. I remember being in fourth grade,
Uh-huh.
well, all through, especially elementary school, when you pick teams for kickball or whatever, recess or PE, and you have team captains, and then they pick people. And I always wanted to be the first girl picked, which is interesting now that I'm an adult. Thinking back, it wasn't, I didn't have an expectation of being the first person.
Yeah.
I always, and I think we had to pick just boy, girl kind of thing. I wanted to be the first girl. So I wanted to be the strongest, the toughest, the fastest, whatever. And I worked hard to make sure that people knew that. And I remember there was a girl, I'm not going to say her name, but she was my nemesis. And they were and she often got picked before me. And that just bothered me because I was faster than her and stronger than her. Or so I thought I was, at least at the time. And it just drove me. It drove me crazy, but it drove me to try harder, because I don't want to be the one in the back. I don't want to be the last person picked. And there always was a last person picked. And I remember, because I've always rooted for the underdog. So I remember how that must have felt for that person, or feeling empathy for that person. I don't want to be that person, but I felt empathy for that person. So when I was the captain, I didn't always pick the biggest, baddest, best, strongest person first, right? So because you get talent in all kinds of ways. And we learn that more as we grow up with, Bill Gates and people, the Revenge of the Nerds, right? It's like, oh, you don't have to be the captain of the football team in order to rule the world.
Well, that's interesting, because I was always consistently the last person picked, male or female, on any sports thing. I just was. And it didn't feel good, but I also knew that wasn't my strength. And so I kind of didn't want to, I was the person who was way out in left field, literally hoping the ball never came to me.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, because I wasn't going to perform on the team. It wasn't going to happen. But that's very interesting. I thought of something when you were talking about that, when you said something about being the first woman picked. I find this subject really interesting for women in our age group. That competitiveness that we have had to generate in a man's world. When you look at a man's world professionally, when you look at a man's world in any sort of competitive type of thing, to be first is often the only slot there is for a woman. It's often the only slot that there is. And I wonder, because I see you do this very well, how you have managed not to have so many multiple nemesis, because of all the women. You have one or two that you're competing directly against, but the rest of them you're not disparaging, and you see the teamwork within them.
A couple of things. One, I know my limitations. And one might argue, if I know that I'm limited in some way, something is not a strength of mine. If it's not something that I really care about, then I don't have a particular desire or need to develop it, right?
Mm.
And I recognize that other people have strengths that I don't have. So in a lot of instances, it really is just a matter of me letting someone else walk through their door without, trying to keep the door closed,
You
bolt the
can't
door
come
down
through
or
your
something. Yeah, it's like, okay, well, that's your door, go through it. And, and there are doors, I have my own doors.
Yeah.
So I want to walk through my doors, and I don't want anybody, holding the door closed for me or slamming the door in my face when they've walked through it or whatever. So, that's sort of akin to just staying in your lane. I
Yeah.
know my lane, I stay in my lane, I know what I'm good at, I know what I'm strong at. Most of the women, and certainly as I've gotten older, a lot of what might have been competition or felt like competition when I was younger is just not there. And part of it is because I've let so much of that go. I just have,
Okay.
it's like, I'm not here as fabulous as I may think I am. I don't have any delusions that I'm the most beautiful woman, that I'm the smartest woman, that I'm the most talented or the most successful or whatever. And I'm okay with that. When I was younger, I wasn't really okay with that. When I was 22 or 25 or what, I'm ambitious and I want to do things and I don't want anything or anyone in my way. Now I'm very comfortable with who I am and where I am. And so if someone is out there and is doing their thing and it's like, oh, I want to be doing that, or I'm trying, it's okay. I'm willing to extend a hand and help them and hope that they might do the same for me. I also, oh, we had a little audio glitch. I also, however, don't have a lot of patience. So if I notice or detect that you are not extending a hand to me, or in some way not one of those women who is uplifting, or who has the capacity to be uplifting or helpful or motivational or inspirational or whatever, that's fine, that's you. I'm just going to move on. So I just don't surround myself with those kinds of people.
That's a good way to do this. Yeah, I think phrase I will use is finding a better class of losers.
Let me say this, and sometimes you get motivation in the strangest places, but and I was not a particular fan of the Spice Girls. I mean, I think I was too old for that. I think they really appealed to a slightly younger generation or demographic than me, or a different demographic than me. But they popularized the phrase girl power.
Yeah.
And I think that was the first time that it really, and I don't remember how old I was, maybe about 30 or something like that, when the Spice Girls were at their prime. And that phrase just always, it resonated with me and it stuck with me. And I'm like, you know what? I like women, and I like women in large part because we've been told not to like women. And, right? We've been taught about a competition, and we've been taught about, the women they're gonna steal your men, they're gonna stab you in the back, they're gonna, all these things that women, potentially will do. And of course some do it and some don't, and most don't. And, but I just have found myself in the company of just dynamic women that are, dynamic, that are professional, transformative, inspirational, well-traveled, well-read, well-bred, just not necessarily well-behaved. let me say that. But I think that's what I like that even more, right? That you're well-traveled and well-heeled and well put together, but not well-behaved. That is my kind of girl. So those are the kinds of friends that I tend to have. And, one of the things, I'll just sort of add this on this concept of the Greer effect, which you hadn't brought up, but I'm going to bring it up.
No,
But the Greer effect is part of my brand, right?
Okay.
And we'll,
Love it.
this is your segue to help you get back to the
Thank you. Yeah.
to the topic. But I find that I'm so open to people, all sorts and kinds of people. And one day, and the Greer effect came to one of my friends and I were sort of sitting down and we were trying to think of some hashtags and some social media stuff and some projects that we could do. But I was looking through my cell phone, looking at the pictures in my cell phone. And I've got these pictures of people. It's like, who the heck is this person?
I know this event. It's like you're sitting there, you have a conversation, take a selfie. I've been there. I know this.
I have probably hundreds of pictures of the most obscure, but you'd be like, who is this? It's like some old man and some couple at a thing. And I'm at a wine country. I'm at some fundraiser, an event. And I just start chatting up people. And the next thing you know, we're the best of friends, or I'm invited to their home for dinner for the holidays or whatever. I'm taking pictures and selfies and trying to be the life of the party. But that ability to bring people out of their shell or out of their whatever their comfort zone is, right? You're at an event with your wife or sister or whatever, and then I just start talking to you, and I bring you in, and I have that effect to make people feel not intimidated or not uncomfortable interacting with someone who's maybe completely unlike them, or just someone that they have no other connection to other than they're at the same event or at the same place at the same time.
So that's very good, because that, going back to the Greer effect, which is this great segue back in, but this whole piece of this involves so much self-knowledge. And in all of this, we've got you being self-deprecating on the types of things that you just are not strong at or not interested in, as well as a full understanding of where your strengths are. How do you collate those things into understanding what brand is?
That's a complex question. Let me try to give a two-part answer, or let me come at it from this particular way.
Okay.
There was a moment in time, and most people, well, I don't know what most people have, so I'm not going to say that. I had this epiphanous moment when I was probably, 14 or so, that changed my worldview, that changed my self-perception.
Okay.
More than any other single event in my life, and I can remember it. So I have an aunt. I have two aunts. Well, I've had three aunts, but anyway, one of my aunts is someone I admire her. I admire both of my aunts, both of my living aunts. But I was out to dinner with my aunt and a friend of hers. I don't remember if it was someone she was dating or just a friend of hers, but we were out. It was my aunt, friend of hers. I think my cousin was there. 4 or 5 of us went out to dinner. And we went to a Chinese restaurant we were in Los Angeles, but we went to this Chinese restaurant for dinner. And that was back at the time. I may have even been a little bit older. I might've been more like 16 or something. I don't remember, but I know I was a teenager. And you know how girls or women are uncomfortable eating in public, right? There's a thing that you do. Someone takes you out to dinner and you're, oh no, I'll just have a salad and I don't want to, because you don't want the messiness of the food. You don't want to look greedy. You don't want to look hungry. You don't want, you're like, oh no, and I just, you're so demure and whatever. Well, so we go to this Chinese restaurant. We order various things. You order family style. And I'm like a little scoop of rice and a little piece of this and and I'm trying to eat I'm all timid and everything. And my aunt, who is someone that I've always thought of as just like the most sort of dynamic, cosmopolitan, classy, out there, socially, just like all of that, right? I just always looked up to her socially in that way.
Yeah.
And she was reaching across the table and scooping out and reaching in other people's plates and eating, I don't know, she had a chicken bone in one hand and whatever. Whatever we were eating. I was just sure she'd be listening like, what? I did not do that. But she just commanded the table in a way. And I just sort of sat back and watched. And the other people at the table, no one was offended by it. No one was put off by it. It wasn't like, oh, look, well, she has no class and no table manners. It was like, oh, she's hungry, she's eating. Oh, she likes the food. That's a great thing. And so it was that sort of, that feeling when you look at a big Italian family eating at the table, or like an Olive Garden commercial or something.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like. That's what it looked like. And watching her, she was no less ladylike in the way that she ate. I don't know what, she was still very ladylike and very I wouldn't say sexy. I don't know that's I wasn't looking at her that way, but it was like, wow, I see why a man would be attracted to her. I could see how she presented herself right then and there. That was the last time I ever didn't eat what I wanted to eat going out to dinner, right?
Wow.
Or going out.
Yeah.
Right then and there, I realized that I could be myself. I could eat. You could do whatever. But the other part of that is I'm cognizant of what other people see when I'm doing that. So I'm not self-conscious about it per se, but I know how to read a room.
Yeah.
So I just became very, very comfortable in my own skin at a very early age and moved forward from there. And things like, and you're a tall lady, I'm tall, I'm tall, right? And I'm African American, and I'm, so there are these things that when people see me, it's like, oh, big bad Black woman. And I try to be smaller and shrink down and all that. And over the years, though, I've had to learn, it's like, no, I'm not going to shrink. I'm not going to be smaller. I'm not going to do anything that makes you comfortable. Now, if I've offended you in some sort of way, that's a different issue. And that is what I'm cognizant of. But just being myself and being who I am in my skin is who I am in my skin. And I own that.
Yeah. Very well. Yes.
So thank you. And now, so in terms of sort of rolling that into a brand, a brand is everything, right? It's all of whatever the product is. And a lot of people think of brand or branding as their logo or their tagline or their whatever. It's all of it. It's the look, it's the feel, it's the values, it's the way you walk, the way you talk. If you're whether you're branding yourself as a person or your business, it's everything about the business. So it isn't so much what you put out there, right? That's your brand promise. That's what you hope to project and deliver. What people receive is your brand. People's perception of all of that. That's what your brand is, right? So and now that we've come to a place where everyone has a brand, right? And yes, when you're a celebrity or a personality, you are your brand. Most of us don't really think of ourselves that way. We think of whatever product was, I'm a massage therapist, or I'm a hairdresser, or I'm a whatever. Your business is your product. Well,
Right.
the reality is, if you're an entrepreneur or a solo practitioner, you are part of that. You can't divorce yourself from your business. So it becomes, all of it has to now get rolled into. So if for instance, you're a hairdresser and you've got a salon and the salon is really nice and whatever, but you're always late, or you're always, you come in, wearing flip-flops or chewing bubble gum or whatever, then people's perception of your salon is now impacted by people's perception of you, right? You can't separate yourself from your brand when you're, when you're small,
Yeah.
or when you're your product. So I am, in large part, a manifestation of my products, right? Of the things that I sell or the things that I do, whether it's my podcast or my blog or my book or my, other projects, and I do consulting, and all of that stuff is all me, right? So I don't get to say, I don't get to have all these opinions and behaviors and activities and things, and then think somehow that all that stuff is going to exist in a vacuum, and that it isn't going to be part of how people perceive whatever it is that I'm doing.
Okay, interesting, because it made me think, and I think I know the answer to this, but I'd like to hear your answer to this. You come at this with so much self-knowledge, and you've had this epiphany where you had your aunt who was just enjoying herself, and you
Yes.
decided, no, this is me, I'm enjoying myself within my skin, and all of those kind of things. Wrapping those two pieces together, where you are cognizant of how people perceive you and you are full on being who you are, how do you create that balance? How do you create that balance without slipping back into trying to please?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm authentically Greer,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So there is no pretense. There is no, um, mask. There's not. I'm not portraying myself as something that I am not. Frankly, can I be frank here?
Yes, you can be frank.
Frankly,
Hi, Frank.
yeah, or maybe I'll be Joe.
Okay.
But frankly, I think if anybody doesn't like me, there's something wrong with them. I think there's something wrong with them. There's nothing about me not to like, right? I don't really
Yeah.
feel that there's anything about me that is not likable, right? So if I were to make a list, on paper, right?
Yeah.
And it's, I think I check all the boxes. I would want to be my friend. I would want to date me. I would want to marry me. I think
Yeah.
I'm an okay girl. Do I have flaws? Of course, yeah. So I don't get really hung up in other people's perceptions so much, but I do. I live out loud,
Yeah.
and I think a lot of, well, we sort of have to now, right? With all the social media and all of the whatever, a lot more people, Holly Hunter
Yeah.
started something, right?
Yeah.
So I tend to live relatively out loud. And when I don't want to be on, I go home and,
Yeah.
I curl up with a good book or a glass of wine or whatever it is I'm going to curl up with. A pint of Haagen-Dazs and a Bridget Jones movie. But
Absolutely.
anyway,
Yep.
so I can, so what the thing that I pay attention to is sometimes while I'm living out loud and doing my thing,
Mhm.
I might have a tendency to disregard other people around me. And that's not fair to them. And I recognize that. So, if I'm somewhere and I'm whooping it up and videotaping and doing whatever and taking pictures and talking to people, they may not want that. Or, the couple next to you at a restaurant is, having a quiet dinner or romantic whatever. And here I am with my girlfriends, we're over here taking pictures and, so it's times like that I'm like, Greer, tone it down. And I'm very, and I can just, stop on a dime and be like, okay, you've gone too far. You're talking too much.
Okay, so you've got the Greer effect, right?
Mhm.
That is part of your brand. Along with these things, there are things you do, books
Mhm.
you've written, your podcast, which I would love everyone in our group to go and listen to. It's a something about the podcast that you and Whitney have together, but that right now before the election, if everyone can turn into the capital G podcast, it's going to be super important. There's a couple of things that I know we've talked about it in the past that you do with your communications background and your background in journalism, that these two things help you present what I would say is a very reasonable and even-handed representation of facts, as opposed to some very strong rhetorical style of editorializing. But along with that, you are also extremely capable of getting your viewpoint through. Tell me about how that balance works, because again, this all goes to brand. This all goes to how you're perceived and how things are and how you get your message across. Tell me how you do that and why it's important to be, especially in an arena such as a political arena where you have strong, definite opinions about who and what and why and how dumb this is and how great that is. But how do you keep it so that someone who doesn't agree with you is still engaged and here's what you have to say, but then you also have this viewpoint that comes through all of this honesty?
Well, capital G came about after, it's been forever, right? And I'm actually, I would almost be mad at myself if not for the fact that it's like, Greer, show yourself some grace. You've been raising a kid and doing whatever, so let it go. You are where you are. But I developed a real interest in politics, what I would consider pretty late in life. So I would say in the last 15 years. Since I'll say since the birth of my son, who'll be, oh my gosh, he's almost 20. So the last 20 years. And part of the reason is because I had a child. All of a sudden things became real. Healthcare became real. Childcare became real. The economy, housing, all those kinds of things became real to me. And then we got Barack Obama, right? Or Barack Obama decided to run for election. So then I started paying more attention. And because I do communication and I'm learning and I'm like, I want to talk about this and I want to be a part of the conversation, I really wanted to do something with that. And I'm like, I want to be a pundit. And I remember when MSNBC first started, I actually applied to be a host on MSNBC back, I don't know, 22 years ago or whatever. So whenever I think they had their 20th anniversary. I feel like they had their 20th anniversary a couple of years ago, but I could be wrong. But whenever they started MSNBC, that was sort of at the beginning. Well, I didn't have what it took to be a host on MSNBC. but I had a desire. And maybe someday I'm going to be a host. I haven't decided if that's a goal yet, but at any rate, but I knew I knew I needed to learn. I knew I needed to learn history. I needed to learn politics. I needed to learn television. I needed to learn how to talk. I need all these kinds of things. So I just set about doing that. Eventually, I find myself in a position where my son's going off to college and I have a chance to have my second act. And I decided that I wanted my second act to be this political thing. So I started casting a net and trying to see, okay, what can I do with this? How do I get into it? How do I start, how do I start in this arena? And I was at an event. I don't know if you know Stephanie Miller. She's she's the daughter of George Miller, who ran with Barry Goldwater, and now she's a comedian / talk show host. So she has her own show, and she's out of LA, and she does this thing called the Sexy Liberal Comedy Tour. So I went to I went to two of the shows. I think they might think I'm stalking them, but I went to the Sexy Liberal Comedy show, and I met, and I can't think of her name right now. Oh my God, it escapes me. But I met one of the Susan. I want to say her name is Susan. I can't think of her name, but I want to say her name is Susan. And she and I were talking backstage because, the Greer effect and all. It was like Greer on the go, which is another hashtag, Greer on the go. So I'm at this event and I'm talking to her. Her name is like Susan Lawful, I can't think. But anyway, oh my God, I have to give it to you. You should be in the show notes. But anyway, so I'm talking to her and I said, I want to do what they're doing and I could be on that stage and I could see that. And she was like, well, if you want to what do you want to do? I was like, I want to be a political pundit. She said, well, then start punditing. That's what she said. She said, well, then start punditing. Is that a word? I was like, I don't know. Well, it is now. So about a week later, I just sat down and I pulled out my camcorder and I did a commentary, whatever was going on in the news. I just started talking about it and I posted it online. And I did 2 or 3 of those, but it was like, I don't have a platform. I don't have an audience. I don't have, it just didn't really make sense. And then things happened and then I sort of let that go. Fast forward 2 years, Whitney, my sister, is doing a series of podcasts. She has various ones that she does. And I think she came to me. I'm pretty sure she came to me and says, I have this idea and we've been talking about doing something for years. And why don't we so we came up with Life, Lemons, and Lemon Drops, the podcast Life, Lemons, and Lemon Drops, where we talk about overcoming obstacles and turning, bad situations into better situations and turning lemons into lemon drops, right?
Yeah.
So we did a few episodes of that. And then I went to Whitney and I was like, would you help me produce a show for myself? I wanted to do a political show and we don't want to talk about politics on Lemon Drops, right? We want to keep that, I don't want to say more positive. It isn't the politics isn't positive, but we didn't want to mess it up with politics. So she was like, yeah, I was actually going to suggest it. And so anyway, so the next thing you know, I came up with, a friend of mine came up with the name, but I developed the Capital G podcast. And yes, it is an opportunity. I talk about politics. I'm talking right now about this election and where we currently are, and then it will evolve, obviously, depending on who wins the presidency and who wins the Senate and all of that. Anyway, so much of who I am, though, is wrapped up in politics. Politics matters. All of it matters. All of this impacts, the race relations, the environment, the education of our children, our healthcare, our ability to, our taxes, our ability to work, all of it is connected. So I feel very passionate about it. Now I know a few things. That said, I'm very measured, or I can be very measured. I am passionate about it. I'm interested in it. But I recognize that I'm not the only one who has an opinion. I don't have to live in this world or I don't get to live in this world by myself. So the fact that there are other people with differing views than my own doesn't make them any less legitimate. I don't agree with them. And I'll tell them that I don't agree with them, or I might not tell them, but I'll certainly give them, some side eye like this, like really, but so I might not tell them that I don't agree with them, but I absolutely respect and honor their ability to have an opinion and a vote. And that vote may not match my own. But what I do want to make sure that people know, and what I try to use my platform to do, is to say, this is how what you do, how you vote or how you feel, this is how it impacts other people. Because most people don't necessarily think about others. They think about themselves, and they think about,
No, I don't want my taxes going up.
I don't want my taxes going up, or I got a big refund, or, I've got a job, or I'd like my doctor. I don't want to lose my health care. To hell with the 30 million other people out there who don't have health care. So my ability to hold back or to refrain from going too far with my opinion is in large part due to the fact that, one, I don't want to just preach to the choir.
Right.
Yes, I could sit and surround myself with a bunch of like-minded people, and then, and it's like, oh, isn't Greer smart? And, or I can, I can talk to some people who don't necessarily agree, but if I can turn them around, if I could get them to see it a little bit differently, or get them to concede on a point here or there, then I've sort of done my job. So as part of my brand, right? My brand is it's a woman on the go. It's a woman who I hate the word influencer, right? But it's a woman who can be influential, who's moving and shaking, making things happen. It's a woman who is a mom. I'm a single mom, and I wear that proudly, as much as I might have not liked to be a single mom, certainly not throughout most of my the experience raising my son. The reality is that gave me so much flexibility in how I did things, right? I could just up and go. I can make the decision. And being empowered in that way, and raising another person to adulthood, and having it effectively, my son, I'd tell him often, so I won't say I don't tell him enough. I don't know that he believes me enough when I tell him that his existence and any success that he has is the greatest compliment that I could ask for, because that's, it's like, that's the fruit of my labor, right? That's what I did.
Right. The ROI, right?
Yeah. So that being a mom, my book, Sucker Moms, is, of course, I'm a sucker, but being a mom is part of my brand. Being a single mom, being a mom on the go, being a mom, a mover and a shaker, all those kinds of things. So yes, being outspoken fits right into that. So I don't have to really change anything. I don't have to be inauthentic in order to live my brand.
That's okay. So living your brand involves knowing your brand. And I can tell you this, this is a hard thing for a lot of people. I appreciate the fact that you've had these epiphanies, you've had these things that have helped develop your self-knowledge, and you have a lot of the understanding of what works and what doesn't, and all of those things. Once we all over here on this other side watching you, once we all get over ourselves, where we are not uncomfortable in our own skin, where we realize we are enough and we're okay and this is fine, how do you suggest we go about identifying those key points. That is it an exercise that you actually sit down and write things down? Is it a test drive? Is it a conversation you have with people to kind of help see what's on the inside or what you're projecting? And the reason I ask this, I'm working with a coach who said the most interesting thing: you can't read your label from inside the bottle. So how do you go about understanding what that label is? You've done it, you're successful at it, and now you know, and you got your Beyonce hair going on in your fan. But now you know. How would you recommend that we all go about knowing too?
There are a couple of things that I do regularly, and is so that we're clear. Most days I feel like I have it all together, and some days I absolutely do not. And some days I'm like, what am I doing? And what are you, you know, why are we here? What are you doing? What are you trying to accomplish? But you have to be comfortable with yourself, and you have to be comfortable with other people. And by comfortable with yourself, I mean, sometimes you just have to sit down and be quiet. You have to, go for a walk. Don't wear headphones. Just be, just, absorb your environment, or sit, do yoga, meditate. I like to get up in the morning and I sit outside and I drink some tea and I write in my journal and I think about, what am I going to do today and what have I accomplished? What did I do? What's on the horizon? And I try to set goals for myself, and I try to envision myself doing what it is that I want to do. But so often we're so busy and bogged down with life, we don't have time to think. And sadly, most employers, I have a day job, as you know, and most employers don't I don't want to say don't allow, but they don't really allow. They don't set up an environment where you can just think about whatever, about your job, about how you're going to do a project. You go from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting, and then you've got some deliverables and you've got due dates and you've got whatever. And sometimes you just need to sit. And I would imagine most people who have a job, who work for other people, if you were just sitting at your desk, feet up maybe, or just sort of looking like you were zoning out, and your boss walked up to you or walked into your office, it would be like, oh my God, obviously we pay you too much. What are you doing? And why are you not? Because we're not allowed to think. It's just not fashionable, and it's not encouraged. So I encourage people to think, to take time, whether that's, an hour a day or a weekend, or, 20 minutes here or 2 minutes there. I have what I call and this is just a silly thing that I do, but the golden time of day, which happens twice a day, which is my birthday, right? So I'm not going to say what day my birthday is, but let's just say, for the sake of arguments, that my birthday was May 10th at 5:10. So 5:10 in the morning and 5:10 in the evening, I just stop. But I only do it when I look at a clock and it happens to be 5:10. I'm like, I just stop. I do not do anything for that minute. Anytime that catches me, it's just one of those things that forces me. It's like now they have the Calm commercials that come on TV, and it catches you, and it's like, just fit whatever it is, 30 seconds, and the clock just give yourself time to just stop and think. So that's the one thing. And by stopping and thinking, you often find yourself with yourself. And a lot of people are not comfortable with that. Their mind starts going, they think about things, sometimes things they don't want to think about. And so they avoid that internal peace and quiet So they're always going, going, going. So I say stop when you can and think. The other, be comfortable around other people. Most of us are comfortable around people we know. When we go out, we stick to ourselves. We stay to ourselves. We're not chatting up the people in the line, at the market, at the whatever. And that's where the opportunities are. You know, nobody is going to come to my door right now and offer me any sort of opportunity. Maybe I don't know, the FedEx guy might show up, but I haven't ordered anything. So there's no reason for anybody to come and show up at my door right now and offer me anything. Everything that I'm going to do or accomplish is outside of that door. So I need to be comfortable going out and being around the people who can lead me to the people, because maybe the first row of people that I meet are not the people, but they know the people, right? Maybe you, Kim, are the person, or maybe you're not the person, but you're that first row and you know people. So to the extent that I can meet other people through you is a wonderful thing. But if I'm not comfortable meeting people who I'm unfamiliar with, if I'm not comfortable meeting people or asking for what I want, or approaching people or inquiring, how did you do this? Or, I want to be a pundit. How did you do it? And figuring out, based on what they say, well, I could sort of see a path for me. Mine's a little bit different, but that's okay. I can go this way where they went that way. But if you don't have the comfort to be around people who can help you get to where you are, that doesn't mean you're doomed. It means you need to learn to get comfortable with people who are in a position to help you get where you are. How do you do that? Baby steps.
Baby steps. Baby steps. That's why in the group, I didn't post it today, but in the group on Thursdays, just ask for something. Ask for something. It's really hard if you're not accustomed to doing it. It's really hard if you're not accustomed to, and I'm going to say culturally, and I don't mean culture, I mean family culture. That, and I use that term, I don't know if it's a correct use, but thinking about how you were raised and what your informative dynamics are in the way you're raised, so you may not have that skill set that says, I'm strong here, here, and here. I'm not as strong here, here, and here. I can go and bang my head against the wall trying to figure out how to be strong here, here, and here. Or I can ignore it and throw my hands up and say, all of my dreams are gone to me because I'm not strong here, here, and here, and I'm not entitled because I'm not strong. Or you say, here, I'm strong here, here, and here. I can help you in these areas, and you're strong over here, and you can help me in those areas.
Yeah.
And it's hard to get there if you're not used to doing it. And with me, I'm just learning it. I'm trying, I'm practicing it.
It is challenging. And I, as confident as I am, and I am confident, there are some areas, and I think for me, my biggest challenge is that I don't want to waste people's time. So I don't want to ask somebody for something if I don't have my act together, right? And then it's like, well, do I have my act together? If I'm just sort of winging it, then, it's one thing for me to wing it and not have my act together if I'm the only one who's impacted.
Right.
It's another thing for me to wing it and drag you along for the ride. And, so, I'm Lucy over here, and I've got some friends who are Ethel, right? And I'm Ethel to some of my friends, Lucy. And we go, we don't know what we're doing. We'll figure it out when we get there. We'll just go and figure it out. And that's great. But when you're asking someone of some import for help, and then you don't have your act together. And I think that's part of what's taken me so long, because there was always another book I needed to read, or another political sciencey thing that I needed to do, or another, whatever. You want to be more. I want to be more. So I'm no different than anyone else in that regard. And I'll just tell this little quick story. The other day, I reached out to someone who is a well-known political pundit, and asked that person to be a guest on my podcast. And to my surprise, they were like, yeah, sure. So I was like, oh my God, I was like all excited and everything. Then when it came time to do it, there was like, it's a woman. So she had a mini emergency, and she was unable to do the show that day. And it was like, okay, not to worry. Well, let's just push it back a day or two. And then she still wasn't able to do it a day or two later. So I could, wait, I could feel bad. I could be like, is she telling the truth? Does she just not want to do it? I can do all kinds of things. Well, I'm not going to I'm not going to ascribe motives and feelings and bad thoughts to her with no, she said she had an emergency. So therefore that is done. But the show had to go on. So I went ahead and did it without her. And I was like, well, hopefully in the next few days, we'll be able to circle back and do it. In the meantime, I thought, and the way that I reached that person was I was on Twitter. She's one of my Twitter followers. And so when you're on Twitter and you follow one another, you can send direct messages. So that's what I had done. And that's how I got her. So then it occurred to me, I have a lot of people who are in the political world who actually follow me on Twitter. And it's like, okay, Greer, why don't you just reach out and ask somebody else? And then I was like, well, now my confidence is all shattered. And it's like, well, she didn't come through and I don't want to, and what, and blah, 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 And then it's like, and the other day I was like, you know what, Greer? If you don't ask, you'll never know. You got to be comfortable asking. I don't like asking because I don't like being told no. I've got to that is something I have to get over, right? I just have to. I don't know how I'm going to get over it, but it's something I have to do for my own self-preservation. I have to learn techniques for asking, being told no, and not letting that, I can be told no. It's the not letting it put me in a funk for the rest of the day, or making me unwilling or afraid to ask that person or a different person in the future. So those are those are real. And that's where my limitations come in. But I did reach out to someone. I haven't heard back yet, so I don't know. I don't have anything to report. There's no breaking news. But I did reach out because I said, Greer, ask for something. Ask somebody somewhere in the universe for something that you want. And sometimes I feel like today's not a lucky day. And then some days I'm like, I don't know. So.
See, there's more.
And so you do ask. You do ask. And the more you do it, like any other habit, right? It just becomes a habit. And the more you do it, the easier it becomes. I still don't want to be told no, but it wouldn't be the first time. And what I have found, more often than not, I'm told yes. So, so there's that. So it's like, okay, you can ask. You might be told no, but you also might be told yes. And then the question becomes, are you ready for the yes? Maybe that should be the name of my next book. Is there a book called that? Are you ready for the yes? I'm going to write that down.
I have to Google it. And Are you ready
for the yes?
I love it.
And I don't know necessarily that I always am, ready for the yes. It's like, oh my God, I've got this, I've got a job, I've got a kid, I've got this, I've got a podcast, I've got another podcast, I've got a blog that's the companion to the capital G podcast, the capital G blog. And I was doing the radio thing, and then and there are just all these things. And you're like, I don't know when I could squeeze another thing in. Well, you can. Just prioritize, slow down, take a deep breath, think it through, give yourself time to think, to imagine, what they call for children imaginative play. Not the toys that, play by themselves, but the, drawing and blocks and things that you can create out of nothing. Give yourself that time, like we did when we were children, to just imagine and play and create and just be.
Well, I don't want to you and I have been talking for a little over an hour now, and I don't want to take up any more of your extraordinarily valuable time, but I do value this conversation, appreciate everything you had to say. I've got a couple of things I'm walking away with. And one of the things is you parented yourself, which I loved. You said, now Greer. And I love now Greer.
I do that.
Love that.
I have a lot of internal conversations.
Yep. And that sort of thing is just, and like I said, I appreciate you. I am so inspired by you. And I thank you again very much. And we're going to post this up on my page, but then I'll give you a copy so that you can put it on yours.
I would love that. And thank you, Kim. I think what you're doing is wonderful. And I appreciate you welcoming me into your community. And I think it's going to be, I would say big, but I don't know how big you want it. But it'll be big. Whether it's large or not is a whole different issue. It's going to be big because it is going to change the lives of the people who are members of your community.
Oh, I certainly hope so. I know it's changing mine, and I am just so happy to be in amongst all of these amazing, inspiring women. Thank you very much, Greer.
You're welcome. Have a great evening.
You too. Hey, bye-bye.
Bye.